Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. For 365 days a year, it's duck season somewhere at Ramsey Russell's GetDucks.com. The world of duck hunting is way bigger than our backyard. The very best duck hunts in Argentina and Mexico are only the beginning. We specialize exclusively in 6 continents worth of proven waterfowl hunting adventures. Whether you're looking for a unicorn species or a fun trigger pulling vacation of epic proportion, we've got the right hunt dialed in. Real duck hunts and authentic experiences for serious duck hunters. As a genuine American duck hunter myself, I know the difference. Founded in 2003, GetDucks.com is not just what we do, it's all we do. I've been there personally many times. Our reputation speaks for itself. Anita and I are personally available to assist before, during, and after your trip because you deserve nothing less. Looking for something closer to home? The next great hunt is closer than you think. Contact proven operators throughout the U.S. and Canada at our U.S. hunt list. Explore worldwide duck hunting at GetDucks.com. All package details, photos, videos, stories, and thousands of client testimonials right there at your fingertips. GetDucks.com. Ball Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shots come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever be like good old-fashioned lead. No way. Say goodbye to all the gimmicky, high recoil compensation science and marketing hype, and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern, take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck season somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations. This is Ramsey Russell, Get Ducks. It's duck season somewhere. It's mid-January. I'm in Dallas at Dallas Safari Club. This morning's guest is Robbie Kroger, Blood Origins. If you haven't seen it, check it out. We're sharing a cup of coffee. He is set up in a small little convention room where he is going to record today a whole series of Weatherby Award recipients, which listen, if you're a hunter in the big game world, the world traveling, that is a kind of a sort of big deal. Robbie, how are you this morning?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's interesting you say the Weatherby is a big deal, but there's a controversy around Weatherby.
Let's hear it.
In that the prize is for the most animals killed.
The most animals killed.
Yeah.
Species-wise.
Yeah. 400 plus species around the world.
So these are the guys that collect antelope, different species of antelopes and
you used the right term. They are collectors. And I think that there's a stigma associated with the tagline being a collector. You're a collector of, as we were about to show in your episode, collector of experiences that comes with the collection of a species. It's tied together.
But it's crazy how a word like collector is stigmatized negatively. And you really want to have an inflammatory word, trophy.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind. In a day and era that every little child that shows up and chews bubble gum in the bleacher at a Little League field gets a trophy.
Yeah.
That we adults have a trophy ambition. And I like I said in my recording with you, nobody, these Weatherby recipient guys, they're not they're knocking off species, they're collecting experiences. Well, when I meet with these people on the floor, they talk about the animals, but my gosh, the depth they can go into talking about the places they've been and the people they've met.
Mm-hmm. No, that's 100% correct, and I think that's why we're here. We're here to film their why, essentially. We want to understand the heart of a Weatherby Award winner. Because the stigma on the Weatherby Award is, these guys are just killers. Nobody's ever taken the time to sit them down and say, why don't you just tell us really about why you hunt? And the experiences you get from it and the people that you meet and the relationships and the conservation. Can you imagine the amount of money that has been pumped into conservation because of these guys?
Because of any hunter. And I agree entirely. You know, and it's hard. It's hard for me even to explain to myself, let alone to somebody in the Walgreen line, if I asked. Well, one time I was in Uruguay and we were wearing camouflage, waiting in an airline line, you know, to board a plane. And this nice lady from Uruguay, who I'd have guessed was a college professor, I later found out she was, asked us what we were doing in her country and why we were there. And my buddy, I'd have said, I'm just touring, I'm just here, you know, to visit. And he jumped in, oh yeah, we're hunting. And she got sensitive about it, you know. But I've often thought about that conversation because when you're duck hunting, you're not managing populations. You're not controlling populations. We're out there hunting animals, and our hunting gives that resource a monetary commodity value, which in turn becomes conservation. But how, you know, I struggle. I'm just telling you, Robbie, I'm free streaming here, but I struggle how would I explain to somebody that I'm a conservationist, that I love the resource, but at the end of the day, I'm out there purely for recreational value, killing it.
Well, I think I would tell you that I think you're wrong when you say that you're not in the population management game. You are certainly in the population management game. That is what hunting does. Hunting operates. Remember that hunting is a wildlife management tool. Regardless of how you see it, regardless of if you're going to go and see it as in purely recreational endeavor, because that is your motivation, right? And now we can wax philosophically right now about the difference between motivation and consequence. And that's where your thought pattern was laying right now. The motivation for you is recreation. You want to go and have fun and laugh and slap somebody on the back and say good job and kill something. Yes, that is a motivation. And I think what we have to get around and away from is the stigma associated with that motivation, right? That is where the trophy, quote unquote, right, word lives. Well, let's talk about the consequence. Let's forget about the motivation for a second. Let's talk about the consequence. Let's talk about population management, right? North American wildlife model. The fact that South Africa has 22 million head of wildlife today versus 500,000 head of wildlife in the middle of the 1970s all the way through 22 million head of wildlife today. Yeah, people go to South Africa to trophy hunt, but the consequence of trophy hunting has been the expansion, proliferation of wildlife on the landscape. Same thing with duck hunting. When you look at wildlife, you look at migratory waterfowl numbers across the United States through time, there is a direct correlation between that and the Migratory Waterfowl Bird Act legislation, regulation, population management through regulation, and the recreational duck hunter.
All right, but I still go back, recreational value, commodity value. In other words, surely for our own personal recreation, we pay quarterbacks and football players, people that can chunk a ball, millions of dollars, so that I can purely enjoy that for my own recreation pastime. And now we're talking wildlife. We're talking, whether we're talking African elephants or mallard ducks. I love to eat duck. Many of the people I share camp with around the world love to eat duck, but nobody is duck hunting just to eat ducks. It is no longer a meat sport. It is purely
but that's okay.
A connection to the resource. But it is okay, I agree.
So it's multifaceted in terms of purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So let's not shy away from the fact that some people's purpose to duck hunt is purely to kill ducks. Okay? But there's many of us that have multiple purposes. They want to see exotic places. They want to kill ducks. They want to eat the duck. Some people, that's a meat source for them. Maybe not the primary meat source any longer because of the society that we live in today. It's about people. It's about relationships. It's about relationships among people and about my relationship connecting to
that resource into that habitat, that is so important to me. It's like I talked about with you previously, is having a conversation with that duck. Mm-hmm. It's an interaction. Mm-hmm. And whether you're tracking kudu across the Kalahari Desert or anything else, it's the same thing. It's a connection to that wild resource.
Well, you're touching on something that is tangible. It's the idea of the difference between a tourist and a hunter. And let me couch it in the way that I think will resonate with you. I went to Australia to hunt a buffalo. Right? Took me 3 days to get there. Cost me who knows how much money. We then backpacked 4 days into the middle of frickin' nowhere that probably no white man has ever stepped foot.
That's crazy, yeah.
And I did it because as a purpose, I wanted to kill that buffalo. If I didn't have that purpose, that was to hunt, that was to kill, there is no way that anyone in the world would do what I just did, to go sit under a tree in the middle of nowhere. Mm-mm. And the difference between sitting under the tree and hunting that buffalo and what you just articulated was you interacting with Mother Nature herself, right? It's you talking to that duck, right?
Right.
Imitating Mother Nature. And you've done the same thing. You've gone into the middle of freaking nowhere, Argentina, that nobody would go in their right mind just to go sit in the middle of the swamp and go, oh, this is beautiful. Okay, great, check the box. I'm gone. I'm going to do something else.
That's exactly
You don't
right.
do that.
That's exactly right.
You do that because you want to have that intimate connection with Mother Nature.
That's right. Speaking of Africa and this whole topic of commodity value conservation, because that's what I'm beating at. My recreational interest transfers a commodity value to this wildlife resource, which gives it a political relevance by which that species continues to perpetuate. Mm-hmm. If there's no value on a substance on Earth, nobody cares about it.
I would go
there's all kinds of endangered species that have no commodity value mm-hmm. that are disappearing because nobody places a commodity or recreational value on it. And like one interesting statistic, back in the mid-'70s, you could shoot, up until the mid-'70s, you could shoot African elephants in Kenya. Mm-hmm. They banned it in 1976. There are now 4% the number of elephants because with no commodity value, you just got this great big hulking animal destroying acacia plantations and walking through villages and eating watermelon patches. Mm-hmm. And they say, hey, there's no commodity value on this thing. He's worth nothing. Kill him and make room for cattle. And I see the same thing. Last year, we were in Zulu land, up on a high mountain, going to chase these little African pygmy geese on the other side on this valley. And the outfitter pointed to this just majestic valley as far as the human eye could see, mountainous and thorn bushes and everything. And he was like, Ramsey, that right there is the highest density of leopards in Zulu land. And I said, you're kidding, that's amazing. He goes, yeah, but they're being shot with reckless abandon because Zulu land has now prohibited the harvest and commercial sale of leopards. Mm-hmm. So now when that little farmer sees that leopard, he no longer sees a source of income by which the school that his children go to and the grocery and the village and everybody thrives. All he sees now is a predatory animal on his calf and he's shot and left in the field to die.
100%.
Just boom. That's amazing stuff to me. I mean, that right there brings home to me the value, because here's the deal. It doesn't matter whether you hunt leopards or ducks or elephants or not. We, the world, we, society at large, benefit from the perpetuation of that species. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of anti-hunters. There's a lot of people that either are anti-hunting or don't agree with my hunting. Mm-hmm. I was in Utah, and they're laying out these clubs. Many clubs have protected in perpetuity and managed intensively these waterfowl habitats. And they go out for 60 days a year and shoot ducks. Mm-hmm. But society at large benefits from that habitat being attacked. The guy at the local park, the guy that goes out on the bird watching trails, all of these people benefit from that hunter's activities the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. Robbie, one reason it was important to me to have this conversation with you is because I do like what your project is, this Blood Origins work. Mm-hmm. It is visceral. It is important. Every episode I watch, I feel something. Mm-hmm. Because I'm listening to people like myself that think like me as hunters, sharing their why. Mm-hmm. How or why did this project start for you? I mean, because, wait a minute, people, y'all listen. The thing that strikes me about this, and Robbie and I were talking about this pre-show, is how different his format is than Bill Dance, or than a lot of these other media projects going on out here. This is very important to me as a hunter.
Right.
That this message. But how did this originate within you?
Well, I think there's two ways I can answer that. One is, hunting. I've got a steeped hunting heritage in my blood. Essentially, my grandfather was a hunter from when he was 4, living in northeast Russia. Lived the heyday of Russian northern China type hunting. He's the only guy that I know that's pheasant hunted in Tibet, white-eared pheasant. Then lived the heyday of African hunting in the 50s and 60s before revolution hit in the 70s. And he pretty much did it, right? He did it all. And he was a prolific storyteller. And so he wrote all these stories down, like literally wrote them all down. And I have them all, and I've read them all. And as growing up as a kid in South Africa, in Johannesburg, 8.5 million people, and then going to Mozambique as a kid for holidays, there's not much left, right? It's all been gone. It's all been taken when I was growing up, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So hunting was never available to me. I never hunted. All I got was the trophies on the wall and the stories that he wrote for me. But other than that, that was it. And so when I came to the States and started experiencing this thing that is essentially in my blood, that's in your blood, that's in all of our blood, then it was like this realization. I was like, oh, okay, this is what hunting is. And now that I've got 2 small boys, I want them to understand truly what hunting is. And so when I turn to where do they get that information, where do they get this information of what truly hunting is? Well, Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel and social media. When you look at those, I got a little disenfranchised in that. I was like, wow, this doesn't look real. That was number one. This wasn't authentic. Like, there's very few shows that are authentic, like Jim's and I think Stephen Ranello's. I think there's a couple there that just do a very good job of being very, very, very
Those two do a very
authentic.
Good job.
And so and the other thing that struck me, which I'll now transition into why we started the project. We started the project obviously for the purpose of bridging that gap between hunters and non-hunters and explaining why hunters do what they do, no doubt. But I also recognize that there's not a project in the hunting outdoor space that's not about self. So Blood Origins is not about Robbie Kroger. You may hear my voice, and that's great. And if you don't, if I walk around this convention hall, nobody knows who I am because they've never seen me.
Not about self.
Because it's not about us. It's not about me, right? It's not about Robbie Kroger. Robbie Kroger is the narrator, but the Robbie Kroger is the narrator of us. And so this project's about us. This project's about you. It's about me. It's about, not me, it's about us. It's our community. It's not about Robbie Kroger. If it's about Robbie Kroger, then every episode will be on me and my
and what strikes me, because this is at the tip of my tongue, Robbie, what you're saying is, when you say us, the community, you're not talking about the community in the United States. One thing that strikes me at Blood Origins is how you have taken this initiative of yours global. Mm-hmm. But because we hunters, it's not just the hunters in Mississippi, the hunters in Arkansas, the hunters in the United States. We hunters globally.
Correct.
And that's a very important distinction that I noticed immediately about your project was the global scope of it.
Well, we're just starting. We've got our initial footprints, and we've been going for about 3.5 years now. And this year is going to be just as good as 2019, if not better, in terms of where we're going and the stories we get to tell. But I'll say the other distinguishing characteristic that I noticed about the outdoor space was the authenticity, right? So I was like, how do I film someone in such a way that makes it authentic? And so we had to develop an interview style that you've experienced that is more monologue-ish versus question and answer that is an interview. Develop a interview space that makes the individual a little bit uncomfortable. And you've experienced that, you even mentioned it and I didn't put this in the episode, but the first thing I actually watched on your episode was like, man, that camera is really close to my face, Robbie.
Yeah.
But it's purposely so, because the uncomfortableness, the discomfort, making you sit there and think and ponder about things that we want to hear about should be a little uncomfortable. Even in a one-on-one, even in a conversation between me and you, it's uncomfortable. But when it becomes a monologue, even more so, which becomes more authentic.
And when we start having that monologue, that conversation about that topic, about the heartbeat of why the individual does what he does, we're talking about something that is a little uncomfortable to talk about. We're talking about something we may not speak in a public conversation or in a booth. It's very personal.
Correct.
It's very personal. And I see now where you did move that camera very close, and it did kind of get into my personal space. Mm-hmm. And it became very personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the filming is very straight on. It's not interview style, quarter turned. So it makes that connectivity to the person on the other side of the camera that much more intimate, and that is purposeful, right? I want somebody to look at it. You're in discomfort, you're uncomfortable, but when somebody watches it, they're also a little bit uncomfortable because they're like, "Whoa, that's super close!" But at the same time, your psyche and your subconscious is saying, "Man, I don't want to tear my eyes away from it."
Yeah,
because
you're right.
I'm like, "Oh, what? Oh, I'm getting."
No, you are exactly right. You just hit the nail on the head of how I feel emotionally when I watch some of your episodes. Mm-hmm. It's dead on. It feels personal.
Yeah,
it's a personal connection as a listener. It's a personal connection as a talker on that particular program. Hey, change the subject. Tell me this, because I agree entirely. Can you articulate some of the inauthenticity, the inauthentic things you see or recognize?
Scripted narrative.
Yeah. False narratives.
Scripted narrative, false narratives. If you miss the shot, like camera-wise, the recreation of the shot, why do you have to recreate it if you missed it? Just get what you get. That's part of it.
That's part of it. I've asked the question with some people I've worked with in the past. We travel several hours across the United States. We set up shop. We're at the right place. The ducks are stale. The ducks are nocturnal. The ducks aren't cooperating. The geese don't want to play. They're indifferent.
Why don't you tell that narrative?
That, as somebody that hunts up to 200 days a year, there's great days. And there's really, really don't fire a shot day, but most days are just those average days. That's part of my experience. Why can't that be a show? Why can't we tell a story with a real hunt? Mm-hmm. Why? I think it goes back some vanity, ego, mm-hmm. self. Mm-hmm. Because my ego won't let me go out there and miss a duck or miss a shot or mm-hmm. not come out with 6 ducks or 7 ducks on my strap. Mm-hmm. And that's a false narrative. Mm-hmm. And I see it going all the way back to the old deer hunting shows, and I see as a daddy that raised children, trying to teach them to deer hunt, a whole different mindset to where they kind of sort of expected to go out every day and shoot a 150-inch whitetail buck. And they don't understand that weeks or months went into that 22 minutes of programming they just watched on TV.
Yeah. No, it's almost a pervasive problem, unfortunately, I believe, in that there is, and it's difficult to explain, in that hunting, I'll start here. The definition of hunting is search, chase, seek. Inherent in those 3 values is failure. There's no finality of purpose of hunting. Otherwise, it would be called killing.
You may fail to harvest an animal, but you didn't fail to go hunting.
Correct. No, you failed to harvest that animal. That's the point, right? Because at the purpose of hunting is to kill.
If I load a shotgun and whistle up my dog and go duck hunting, I may not have shot a limit. I may not have shot a bunch of birds, but I didn't fail to go hunting. At some point, I guess.
No, you went hunting.
I went hunting. Mission accomplished.
No, not mission accomplished, because you went out there to kill a duck. And if you didn't kill the duck, you didn't get the finality of the purpose of why you went.
Right.
There are other indirect benefits that we've talked about, all right? So that is inherent in a hunt failure. It's not killing. We're not just killers, because if we were, then you would go and do something that you would get your satisfaction and rocks off by killing. Go down to the local abattoir and volunteer. And you'll get all your rocks off.
We're not out there just to watch the sunrise.
No, you're not. All right? So if you get into the outdoor space, that you become this quote-unquote hunter that's on TV, then you would expect that individual would know what they're doing. There should be a good hunter, and more often than not, they should be killing animals because they're on television. Social media, now you're getting into a gray zone, right? Where people are always, or feel like they need to, always put a best foot forward, right? So we're not going to show failure on social media. We're always going to show how good we are. And so then in the social media space, the social media space for hunting now emulates what the TV space is supposed to represent, i.e. these very good professional hunters that have shows. Social media now is emulating that space. So now when you show failure in the social media space, you get chastised. You get like, you get this hunter and hunter hate, wherein everyone's failing, but nobody's willing to put their hand up and go, I failed this morning. Or, hey, it sucked. Hunting sucked this morning.
Are you alluding to the guy that goes out and kills a small buck?
No.
Or a young buck? Because I see the same thing happening.
No, I'd love to see. No, I'd love to see. And here, we filmed Travis T-Bone Turner. And he said it perfectly. He was like, we have built this level, this standard of what hunting is supposed to be, that you're supposed to kill this 160 booner white-tailed deer every year, wherein blue-collared mechanic gets 4 days off a year, and he uses those 4 days to hunt, and a spike steps out and he shoots it. And he is so elated because he shot that buck, yet he is petrified to put it on social media because he's going to get chastised.
Yeah. I had this talk a few weeks ago. Somebody was asking me, they said, well, I'm shocked that you're not a trophy hunter when it comes to whitetail or big animals, and because you shoot all these rare and sorted species around the world. And I'm like, well, here's the difference. I can go shoot a red-crested pochard or a bar-headed goose, and the first one I pick up is a trophy. The second and 10th and 100th are just like the first one. Mm-hmm. And that helped me transition more into a collector of experiences, mm-hmm. instead of trophies, instead of big animals. I think this duck hunting thing, even though it's exotic or far-flung or remote, it's still the whole trophy thing. Mm-hmm. Mine's bigger than yours. Mm-hmm. That just eludes me. That just doesn't enter into my equation at mm-hmm. all. Mm-hmm. But why somebody hunts, if that is why somebody hunts, is to shoot the absolute biggest, I'm fine with that. If sure. somebody goes out and shoots a spike, I'm fine with that, because sure. what having traveled around the world and seeing hunting in the context of 6 continents, what I realize is we're all in the life raft together. Mm-hmm. Why somebody hunts is beside the point. They hunt. Mm-hmm. So they're part of my team. Mm-hmm. And that's what's important to me. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of part of this narrative I'm trying to create. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Mississippi, and I'm gonna say in my early teens, it became a very contentious issue: the still hunter versus the dog hunter. Mm-hmm. And running deer with beagle hounds and walkers is about as old and traditional and venerable in the South as it becomes. Mm-hmm. Now the land has become too fractionalized. There's not land to really do that anymore, but it became a very politically contentious issue. And now in social media, it's the traditional archer versus the modern archer versus the rifle hunter versus the trophy hunter versus the meat hunter. Sure. I'm like, wait a minute, guys, we all hunt.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Right. No, you're right, man. There's a common denominator between all those types.
It's a common denominator.
Traditional, compound, long range, muzzleloader, dog, coon, squirrel, duck, deer, elk, with the common denominator behind all of those being hunter.
Right. We are hunters.
Yep. And so I think that is, there is, I don't know, there seems to be I think the hunter on hunter hate is where we as a community need to really, really work on. Essentially when you start thinking broader, the hunter on hunter hate is doing the job of the antis for the antis without them having to do anything. And if these hunter on hunter hate people realized, yeah, it's a laugh, ha, 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 but when you take a step back and see the broader impact for my kids one day and my grandkids one day, because of this, just getting a laugh today, hopefully they can see, why people are like,
What do you hope to accomplish with the Blood Origins Project? What do you hope? Is there a stopping place? Let me ask that. Is there a stopping place? Because if there's a stopping place, that means you have a finite goal.
No stopping place.
So what do you hope to accomplish? Tell me when Robbie Kroger says Blood Origins hit home, it hit its mark.
It's hitting its mark right now.
It is.
Yeah, and so the point.
Why so?
The reason so is that I've had, not a lot, I'm not going to lie, but we've had maybe a couple of dozen non-hunters. Even last night we were sitting at dinner with a non-hunter and she was like, man, I love your stuff. I was like, there we go. End of story. That's it. That's the point, right? To be able just to communicate to a non-hunter. Just one, check that box, 2, great. 3, 400, 200, just like you, great, amazing, keep going. That's the perception, right? Because here's the impactful thing. There's 4% of the hunting community. Of that 4%, there's, I would say, less than 1% that are the radical right, that, beat their chests and whatnot. Then if you go to the other end of the spectrum, there's probably another 5% that are anti-hunters, that you'll never convince otherwise. But it's the 200 block in the middle, 200 million American block in the middle, that are the most important to our lifestyle. They decide whether we have it or we don't.
That's right.
That block right now, based on a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Statistics survey of hunter approvals, is actually increasing. Hunter approvals have gone from 76% to about 82% in the last 5 to 6 years. So that's where we want to keep it. Yeah. So how do we make sure that we keep it that way? Well, we make sure by putting out narratives around hunting that will keep them in that approval rating block. And that's the purpose of Blood Origins, to make sure that that block, that approval rating keeps going in the right direction or stays in that upper echelon of, yes, we approve of hunting. What happens is if it starts decreasing is when they start seeing things that, so most of that 200 million will say, I don't have an opinion about hunting. Mm-hmm. So you want that to be that way. You don't want them to get a negative opinion about hunting. And so I'd rather flood their Facebook and their Instagrams and whatnots with things around hunting that showcase who we are.
Right. So much of pro-hunting rhetoric is the preacher talking to the choir. It's we hunters talking to each other. We're wasting our breath talking to anti-hunters. Mm-hmm. There's no converting them. It is the middle ground. It is the middle ground. And I hear a lot of negative stuff. I've heard a lot of negative stuff in duck hunting about Duck Commander and Duck Dynasty. Mm-hmm. It's their fault. What's their fault?
Well, yeah.
For bringing something like hunting into a New York City apartment and making that lifestyle acceptable to that middle ground?
Right.
No, they did a very, very good job of positively portraying us. Mm-hmm. I felt like not to me, not to the local public ground, to everybody.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that there's obviously, you can't help it, especially with TV shows and whatnot, that people associate a certain perception or a certain stigma around hunters.
That's right.
So duck commanders, a bunch of guys out of Louisiana, a bunch of Cajuns, a bunch of rednecks. Okay, not all hunters are like that, but
that's right.
So that would be the only, but you can't help that. The fact that they are hunting, they do it in a very respectful way. They broadcast a Christian message through their TV show. Hey, can't fault that.
What do you feel like the role, just getting off into a different subject, what do you feel like the role or the involvement, or what do you think like the current role of industry is in hunting? What role are they playing? What role might they play differently? What could they do differently? Because now I hear an opinion, strictly an opinion, that, well, all the monetization and selling product is what's wrong with hunting nowadays and the way we're doing this thing and the demand and like well, on the one hand, like we start off the show saying, that commodity value of wildlife, selling products, selling gear, selling guns, selling bullets, selling camo, that gives it, to me, a political relevance. But is it all just about the selling of product? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's got to be, what do you see maybe that hunting or industry could do differently or do better along the lines of conservation or promoting hunting, not just selling product? Is there anything? Are they doing a great job, do you think? I know it's a personal opinion, but...
Yeah, I think that it's a business, right? And we're not going to get away from a business, nor should we. So that's opinion number one. Opinion number two would be that I think that industry has a inherent, they have an inherent role and, what's the word I'm looking for here? I feel like they have an obligation. That's the word I'm looking for. They have an obligation to telling the right story. They have an obligation to perpetuate industry. They want to perpetuate hunting. They want to perpetuate hunting, right? And if hunting is slowly decreasing, well, what narrative should we be, promoting beyond the selling? I'm separating the two right now.
Right.
That is a promotion of our heritage. So I think that there's an obligation there. I think them stepping up and getting involved with very cool on-the-ground conservation projects.
Pro-hunting projects?
Yeah, pro-hunting projects. I think that's obviously an opinion of mine. So I think there's opportunity for, the outdoor industry is probably like most huge conglomerates. It's a big oil tanker, right? And you can't turn an oil tanker 90 degrees in a matter of minutes. It's a slow turn, and the narrative is changing. You've noticed it yourself. Slowly but surely, you're getting more and more people that are changing their narrative around hunting, and that's just part of that slow ship turning.
I see hunters themselves. I see the narrative among hunters changing. I see it. I've seen it in the last 20 years. Good and bad, but mostly good, I believe. And Robbie, I appreciate you having shared your time. I know you've got a very busy morning.
I appreciate you, man. We look forward to dropping your episode.
And this won't be the only time we talk, as our schedules meet back up. I keep up with your project. Folks, you guys listening, it's in your blood too. That's why you're listening. That's why you're listening to two hunters talk about a project or talk about ideas. So I know it's in your blood. Y'all can keep up with me at Ramsey Russell Get Ducks in the social media and at Blood Origins.
Yeah, Blood Origins.
Check out this project. I really think if you've not yet seen it, I can't imagine that you have not, but if you've not yet seen it, please check out Blood Origins. I think that the message that Robbie is sending is landing in the right place. It's creating a very positive narrative about why I hunt, about why you hunt, and about why people should hunt, and about why non-hunters should value our efforts, us putting our time and our money into hunting. Thank y'all for listening. Duck Season Somewhere is produced by Ben Page. Original soundtrack by our friend Cody Huggins.